Imagine your coach, the person who's supposed to believe in you, benches you not for your performance, but for standing up for yourself. Then, while you're dealing with that betrayal, you get scouted by a top team. And your coach? He gets replaced. This isn't just a sports story. It's a story about resilience, about turning adversity into your greatest advantage. It's about fighting for what you deserve, even when those in power try to hold you back. This is Alex's story. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Alex, and I never thought the sting of betrayal could eclipse the pain of a torn ACL. 2 days after a reckless tackle shattered my knee, I found myself alone in the hospital, the morphine doing little to ease the emotional ache. My coach, the man who'd promised to make me a star, had chosen a crucial scouting event over my well-being. "You'll recover," he'd texted, "but this showcase is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the team." Hours later, the team's social media flaunted a photo, coach beaming alongside the team at the showcase. The caption read, "Focused on the future." That was the moment everything shifted. I decided their priorities needed a serious realignment. Growing up, I existed in a different realm from the team. I was the dedicated player, the one who arrived early for practice, stayed late to perfect my technique, and always followed coaches' directives without question. I pushed myself relentlessly, driven by a dream of playing professionally. But the team, they operated under a different set of rules. They were the coach's favorites, the golden boys who could get away with anything. They were often late, sometimes skipped training, and their mistakes on the field were often glossed over. "They have potential," coach would say. "They're still learning." When I was 16, I sacrificed my summer to earn money for a training camp. When the team turned 16, coach gifted them personalized gear, citing their dedication as the reason. The pattern was clear. They received, I earned. The regional finals coincided with my 18th birthday, a milestone I'd always envisioned celebrating with my team. Guess where coach and the team were? 3 states away, at a scouting event, while I spent my birthday alone. "We're sorry, Alex," coach said over the phone that night, his voice devoid of genuine remorse. "But this event is crucial for the team's future. Your birthday is just a day." Despite the constant slights, I excelled. I poured my heart and soul into every game, every practice, driven by an unwavering belief in my abilities. My apartment became my sanctuary, a small space near the training ground where I displayed my trophies and awards, tangible proof of my hard work and dedication. Meanwhile, the team cycled through different positions, each time met with coaches' unwavering support. When I voiced my concerns during one of his pep talks, coach actually said, "The team needs more support. You've always been so independent." As if my independence was a choice, not a necessity. Still, I maintained team spirit. I showed up for every game, every training session, and listened to coach's endless praise of the team's natural talent. I held my tongue when coach dismissed my concerns about playing time, but celebrated the team's every victory, even when I was sidelined. "Team comes first," coach always said, though it became increasingly clear that, in his eyes, the team was more first than I was. I didn't resent the team, not really. They were just playing the game according to the rules coach had established. They'd been cast as the stars, and I was the supporting player. What hurt was how readily coach had assigned these roles, and how stubbornly he maintained them, even as I consistently outperformed them. When I received an MVP award last season, I called coach with the news. He listened for approximately 30 seconds, then interrupted. "That's great, Alex, but can I call you back? The team just signed new endorsements and it's a big deal." He never called back. That was our dynamic, a constant orbiting around the team's sun, while I existed in the cold outer reaches of the solar system. I had accepted this reality so completely that I no longer expected anything different. Perhaps that's why what happened after my injury hit me so hard. Even from the farthest reaches of space, you can still feel the shock of a meteor impact. The night everything changed started like any other. I had just finished a grueling practice, pushing myself to the limit as always. It was late, and a light rain had started to fall, creating a slick sheen on the training field as I walked to my car. I remember thinking about grabbing a protein shake, then deciding it could wait until morning. That small decision to drive straight home instead of to the gym might have saved my career. I was minutes from my apartment, making a routine tackle during a scrimmage, when I felt a sharp, searing pain in my knee, the world outside a blur of pain and shouting. When it finally stopped, I was lying on the ground, my leg twisted at an unnatural angle. The pain hit seconds later, white-hot and all-consuming. I could hear someone shouting and realized distantly it was me. Then came the voices, concerned teammates, coach calling the medics, someone else telling me not to move. The rain fell on my face, mixing with the sweat on my brow. The medics arrived. Quickly. I remember fragments of their conversation as they worked to stabilize me before extraction. ACL tear, possible ligament damage, significant swelling. They administered something for the pain, and the world became mercifully fuzzy. At the hospital, things moved with urgent efficiency. Scans confirmed what the medics suspected. My ACL was torn, requiring immediate surgery. I had also suffered a fractured tibia and multiple contusions. Before they wheeled me into the operating room, I managed to tell the nurse to call my coach. "He'll be here," I remember saying with absolute certainty. "He'll come." The surgery lasted 4 hours as orthopedic surgeons worked to reconstruct my shattered knee. When I finally emerged from anesthesia in the recovery room, my first blurry thought was to look for my coach. The room contained only medical staff and machines. "Did my coach call?" I asked the recovery nurse, my voice raspy from the intubation tube. "Let me check, honey," she said kindly. She returned minutes later with a gentle expression that immediately told me the answer. "He called. He said he's at a scouting event and can't make it back right now. He asked to be kept updated. On your condition." The pain medication couldn't touch the hurt that bloomed in my chest. I closed my eyes, fighting tears. Later that afternoon, from my hospital bed, I called my coach directly. He answered on the 4th ring, the sound of cheering and celebration in the background. "Alex, how are you feeling? The hospital said the surgery went well." "I've been better," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "When are you coming?" A pause. I could hear him cover the phone, speaking to someone else. Presumably, the team manager. When he returned, his voice had that artificially bright quality he used when delivering bad news. "Alex, we're at a crucial scouting event. It's a 2-day program, and we've already paid for the accommodations. You know how important this is. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the team. Coach, I was seriously injured. I had major surgery. I'm alone in the hospital." "I know, Alex, and we're so sorry, but the doctor said you're stable, right?" "The team needs me right now. This is time-sensitive. You'll recover, but their futures depend on getting noticed here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, you're not coming?" "We'll come as soon as the event is over, I promise. Maybe in a day or 2. The team is really nervous about this showcase, and we don't want to abandon them right now." Abandon them. The irony was like acid in my throat. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "I have to go. The nurse needs to check my vitals." It was a lie, but I couldn't bear to hear any more justifications. After hanging up, I stared at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. The pain in my knee throbbed in time with my heartbeat, but it was nothing compared to the hollow feeling in my chest. The hospital staff noticed my distress. My primary nurse, Sarah, brought me extra blankets and sat with me during her break. Another nurse helped me call Ben, a teammate who had become a close friend over the past 2 years. Ben arrived within the hour, his face tight with concern and anger when I explained why Coach wasn't there. "That's messed up, Alex. Seriously messed up." "It's fine," I said automatically. The response I'd been programmed to give my entire life when faced with Coach's behavior. "The team needs him more." Ben looked at me for a long moment. "No, they don't. And it's not fine." He stayed with me that night, sleeping uncomfortably in the recliner beside my bed, leaving only briefly to get fresh clothes. He helped me wash my face, brought me real food to supplement the hospital meals, and made me laugh despite everything. "This is what a team actually does," he told me as he helped me adjust my bandages. "They show up." The next day was a blur of pain management, doctor visits, and the first excruciating attempts at movement. The orthopedic surgeon explained that while the surgery had been successful, my recovery would be long and difficult. 6 months non-weight-bearing, followed by months of physical therapy. As an athlete, I understood exactly what lay ahead. The painful progression, the setbacks, the slow rebuilding of strength and function. What I didn't anticipate was facing it essentially alone. Coach called that evening, a brief check-in where he spoke more about the scouting event and the team's performance than my condition. I answered his questions mechanically, too tired to feel much of anything. "They're meeting with some big names," he gushed. "One scout even mentioned they might be interested in the team." "That's nice," I said, watching the IV drip medication into my arm. "And the facilities are amazing. They have a state-of-the-art training center." I closed my eyes. "I'm glad they like it. We're taking them out to celebrate tomorrow night. They deserve it." He didn't bother mentioning that I needed things too. Help showering, assistance with pain management, emotional support. What would be the point? After the call, I tried to sleep but couldn't. The night stretched endlessly, punctuated by vitals checks and pain medication administration. I lay awake, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, listening to the beeping of machines and occasional voices in the hallway. The message arrived the next morning. My phone buzzed with a text notification from Coach. I opened it, expecting perhaps an update on when he might visit. Instead, I found a photo. Coach and the WOW team, all beaming at the camera, standing in what was clearly a high-end restaurant. The caption read, "Celebrating success, the future is bright." I stared at the image, unable to process what I was seeing. There was no mention of me, no acknowledgement that his star player was lying in a hospital bed with a shattered knee. Just celebration, as if nothing else in the world mattered beyond the team's potential. Something broke inside me then, something fundamental that had been cracking for years, but had somehow held together through sheer determination. The nurse found me sobbing uncontrollably, the phone still clutched in my hand, my body shaking so violently that my leg brace rattled against the bed rail. They had to sedate me. When I woke hours later, Ben was back, his expression a mixture of concern and barely contained fury. He held my hand while I explained what had happened, showing him the photo that had finally broken me. "I've always known I was second place," I whispered, "but I didn't think I meant nothing." "You don't," Ben said firmly. "You mean everything to a lot of people, just not to him, and that's his loss." I scrolled through years of similar incidents, stored in my memory. Coach missing my championship game because the team had a minor disagreement the night before. Him forgetting my 20th birthday, but throwing an elaborate party for the team's new endorsement deal. Coach cutting short my phone call about an award because the team was sending him highlight reels. "It's always been like this," I said, my voice hollow. When I needed specialized equipment, he made me fundraise half the cost because it was extra, but he paid for the team's new uniforms the next week without question. When I got into the professional league, he said he couldn't help with training costs because he was financially strained, then bought the team new gear the same month. Ben listened, his face growing increasingly troubled. Alex, this isn't normal. This isn't what a coach does. It's what your coach does. Well, he sucks, Ben said bluntly. And you deserve better. The hospital's social worker stopped by that afternoon, concerned about my emotional state. Dr. Evans was a kind woman with gentle eyes who sat beside my bed and simply listened as I poured out years of being the less favored player. What you're describing is a long-standing pattern of differential treatment, she said when I finally ran out of words. It's not uncommon, but that doesn't make it any less harmful. I've tried so hard to be okay with it, I said, to be the bigger person. Perhaps it's time to prioritize your own well-being, she suggested. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Boundaries, I repeated, tasting the word. It had never occurred to me that I was allowed to have boundaries with my coach. Later that night, after the nurses had dimmed the lights and the hospital had settled into its quieter nighttime rhythm, I made a decision. I was done being the good player who accepted scraps of attention, done making excuses for coach's behavior, done pretending it didn't hurt. For the first time in my life, I decided to put myself first, and that meant stepping away from the person who had always put me last. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. Since my apartment had stairs and no elevator, staying there alone was impossible. Ben immediately offered his guest room. It's yours for as long as you need it, he insisted, already rearranging furniture to accommodate my wheelchair and eventual crutches. Coach called the morning of my discharge, finally heading home after the scouting event, and I let the call go to voicemail. I texted a brief response. Being discharged today, staying with a friend. We'll be in touch when I'm ready. Then I turned off my phone. The next 4 weeks were focused entirely on healing, both my body and my spirit. Ben helped me settle into his guest room, which he transformed with small touches to make me feel at home. My favorite blanket retrieved from my apartment, fresh flowers on the nightstand, a stack of books I'd been meaning to read. With Ben's help and the assistance of a home health nurse who visited 3 times a week, I navigated the challenges of early recovery, the awkward sponge baths, the painful exercises, the frustration of dependence. As an athlete, I knew exactly what my body needed to heal, but experiencing it firsthand was humbling. By week 2, I felt strong enough to turn my phone back on. The notifications were overwhelming. 27 missed calls from Coach, 40-plus text messages, several voicemails, and even emails. The tone evolved from casual checking in to increasingly frantic concern. Alex, call me when you get this. Why aren't you answering? We're worried. This isn't like you. Please respond. We're getting very concerned. If we don't hear from you soon, we'll have to call the hospital. Alex, this isn't funny anymore. I'm your coach. You can't just ignore me. I read through them all, but responded to none. The team had also texted several times, their messages, more tentative. Hey Alex, how are you feeling? Coach said you're not answering him. I hope you're okay. Let me know if you need anything. Alex, I'm really worried about you. Please just let someone know you're all right. To the team alone, I sent a brief reply. I'm physically safe and recovering. I need space from Coach right now. This isn't about you. They responded immediately. We understand. Take the time you need. We're here for you. It was the first indication that perhaps the team wasn't entirely blind to Coach's behavior. As the silence continued, Coach's messages grew increasingly desperate. He contacted the hospital, which couldn't provide information due to privacy laws. He called the training facility, where my manager, whom I'd briefed on the situation, politely informed him I was on medical leave and suggested he respect my privacy. In week 3, Coach showed up at Ben's door. I was resting in the bedroom when I heard the doorbell, followed by Coach's voice. Ben had been expecting this. We'd discussed the possibility and had a plan. I texted him from the bedroom. I don't want to see him. Ben handled it perfectly. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him to prevent Coach from looking in or attempting to enter. Alex is safe and recovering, I heard him say firmly. He's not ready to see you right now and has asked for space. I'm his coach, Coach protested, his voice rising. I have a right to see him. No, you don't, Ben replied calmly. Alex is an adult who has requested privacy during his recovery. I'm respecting that wish, and I'm asking you to do the same. This is ridiculous, Coach said. Alex, I know you can hear me. I came all this way. Ben's voice remained steady. Coming all this way now doesn't change the fact that you weren't there when he needed you most. Alex will contact you when he's ready. Please don't come back unannounced. It's not helpful to his recovery. He left reluctantly, but not before calling through the door. This isn't like you, Alex. I don't understand why you're doing this. That was the problem. He didn't understand, had never understood how his behavior affected me. While maintaining my silence with Coach, I focused on strengthening my support network. Teammates organized a meal train. My neighbor fed my cat and collected my mail. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months reached out after hearing about the accident, and many showed up with practical help or simply companionship. I discovered that I had built a chosen family over the years, people who showed up not out of obligation, but genuine care. The realization was both healing and heartbreaking. Why had I spent so many years chasing the approval of a coach who consistently placed me second when I had people who put me first without being asked? By week 4, I was making good physical progress. I had transitioned from the wheelchair to crutches for short distances, and the surgical site was healing well. My emotional healing was progressing too, aided by twice-weekly sessions with a therapist who specialized in athletic trauma. What do you want from your relationship with your coach moving forward? Dr. Lee asked during one session. I don't know if I want one at all, I admitted. But if we do have a relationship, it has to be different. He needs to understand what he's done and take responsibility for it. No more excuses. And if he can't do that, I considered the question. Then maybe it's better to have no relationship than a harmful one. It was a revelation. The understanding that no relationship was preferable to a damaging one, even with a coach. The silence had given me clarity I'd never had before. For the first time, I was seeing my team dynamic from the outside rather than from within the fog of emotional manipulation I'd lived in for decades. After 5 weeks of silence, I felt ready to face my coach. Not because I'd forgiven him, but because I was strong enough now to set boundaries without crumbling. I texted him, I'm ready to talk. Meeting room at the training facility, Thursday at 2 p.m., just the two of us. His response was immediate. I'll be there. I've missed you. I didn't reply. Missed me wasn't supposed to hurt like this. The meeting room was my strategic choice. Public enough to discourage dramatic scenes, private enough for honest conversation, and neutral territory that gave me the psychological advantage of choosing the battlefield. Ben dropped me off, parking nearby with a promise to be just a phone call away if needed. Coach arrived 10 minutes early, looking anxious and older than I remembered. His eyes were puffy, his hair less perfectly styled than usual. His shoulders were hunched, his expression weary. He spotted me immediately and rushed toward the table. Alex, thank God, he said, reaching for me. I held up a hand, stopping him. Please sit down. I'm not ready for that. He recoiled slightly, hurt flashing across his face, but complied. He pulled out a chair across from me. You look well, he offered cautiously. How's the knee healing? As expected, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. 6 months of physical therapy ahead, but the bone is mending properly. We've been so worried, Coach said, his voice trembling. Not knowing if you were okay, not being able to help you. Like I was worried in the hospital, I interrupted, surprising myself with my directness. Not knowing if my coach was coming, not having help when I needed it most. The room fell silent. Someone laughed outside in the hallway. Alex, Coach, began, I understand you're upset about the scouting event, but this isn't about the scouting event, I said evenly. This is about a lifetime of being treated as less important than the team. The scouting event was just the final straw. Coach shook his head. That's not fair. I care about all my players equally. Care isn't measured by words, Coach. It's measured by actions. And your actions have consistently shown that the team's needs, wants, and even whims come before anything happening in my life, even a career-threatening injury. I removed my phone from my bag and pulled up the photo he'd sent from the restaurant. I placed it on the table between us. I was lying in a hospital bed with a shattered knee when you sent this. No mention of me. No acknowledgement that your star player was in crisis. Just celebration, as if nothing else mattered. Coach had the decency to look ashamed. I made a mistake. No, I corrected him. A mistake is forgetting to bring a water bottle to practice. This was a choice, one of many similar choices you've made throughout my career. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I began listing examples, my voice steady despite the emotion behind my words. The missed championship game, the disparity in support, the forgotten milestones alongside the team's elaborate celebrations, the calls cut short to accommodate the team's needs. The pattern was undeniable when laid out chronologically. Coach's eyes filled with tears. I never meant to make you feel less valued. Intent doesn't erase impact, I replied, a phrase my therapist had offered that resonated deeply. Whether you meant to or not, the message I received my entire career was that I mattered less. That's not true, Coach protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? When have you ever prioritized me over the team? When have my achievements, my needs, my emergencies ever taken precedence? He opened his mouth, then closed it again, unable to provide an example. I don't blame the team, I continued. They didn't create this dynamic. You did. And you reinforced it every time you dropped everything for them while expecting me to understand, to be mature, to handle things on my own. You were always so capable, Coach said defensively. The team needed more guidance. No, the team was allowed to need guidance. I was expected not to need anything. The conversation was interrupted by the meeting room door opening. We both looked up to see Ben, himself walking in, scanning the room until he spotted us. Ben, Coach said, surprised. What are you doing here? I asked Alex where you were meeting, he said, approaching our table. I thought I should be here for this conversation. I hadn't expected this development, but as Ben pulled up a chair, I realized his presence might actually help drive my point home. Alex was just telling me how he feels I favored the team, Coach explained, a slight defensive edge to his voice. Ben looked directly at him. He's right. The simple statement hung in the air like a thunderclap. What? Coach asked, clearly stunned by this betrayal from a key player. He's right, Ben repeated. You've always favored the team, and it's not fair to Alex. It's not fair to any of us, actually. Coach stared at him, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. I never wanted to be the favorite, Ben continued. Do you know how much pressure that puts on me? How guilty I felt watching Alex work twice as hard for half the recognition? How uncomfortable it makes me when you drop everything to solve our problems, but expect him to handle things alone. I looked at Ben with new understanding. We'd never discussed this aspect of our team dynamic, both trapped in the roles assigned to us. I respect you, Coach, Ben said, his voice softening. But Alex deserved better. He deserved a coach who showed up for him after his surgery instead of a stupid scouting event. We would have been fine on our own. We're professional athletes, not 5-year-olds. Coach appeared genuinely speechless, glancing between us as his carefully constructed narrative crumbled. Here's what's going to happen, I said, bringing the conversation back to my prepared points. I'm setting boundaries. I don't know what our relationship looks like moving forward, but I know it can't continue as it has been. I outlined my terms clearly. No more comparing me and the team, acknowledgement of past favoritism, and a commitment to more balanced attention. I explained that I would be limiting contact for the next few months as I continued my physical and emotional healing. If you want to rebuild a relationship with me, it starts with respecting these boundaries, I concluded. No dropping by unannounced. No guilt trips. No acting like I'm being unreasonable for protecting myself. And if we don't agree with these boundaries? Coach asked, the concept clearly foreign to him. Then we don't have a relationship, I said simply. I'd rather have no coach than a coach who continues to hurt me. Ben reached across the table and took my hand, a gesture of solidarity that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I support Alex in this, he told Coach, and I'll be setting some boundaries of my own. Coach wiped his eyes, visibly struggling to process everything. I never realized. I never intended. I know, I said, softening slightly. But impact matters more than intent. You have a choice now. You can dismiss my feelings and continue as before, or you can do the hard work of examining your behavior and making real changes. As I stood to leave, using my crutches for balance, I felt lighter than I had in years. Whatever happened next, whether Coach rose to the occasion or not, I had finally spoken my truth. I was no longer the good player silently accepting scraps of attention. I was Alex, worthy of respect, consideration, and equal value. Ben walked me out to where my friend Sarah was waiting, leaving Coach at the table with much to consider. That was brave, Ben said quietly. It was necessary, I replied. For the first time in our adult lives, we were truly on the same side. Not as competitors for a coach's attention, but as teammates supporting each other's growth and healing. The weeks following our confrontation were quiet. Coach respected my request for limited contact, though he sent occasional text messages, brief, cautious inquiries about my recovery that I answered with equal brevity. Ben, however, became a more consistent presence in my life, visiting twice weekly as I continued physical therapy and gradually regained independence. He's struggling, Ben reported during one visit, stirring honey into his tea at my kitchen table. I had recently moved back to my apartment, now navigating with a walking boot instead of crutches. He's defensive, keeps saying we're exaggerating. He's been looking through old highlight reels, trying to justify his actions. Is he actually reflecting or just feeling sorry for himself? I asked. Ben considered this. Both, I think. He asked me yesterday if I really felt he treated us differently. I told him to look at the team roster for the last 5 years and count how many players he personally recruited versus those who earned their spot through tryouts. And then I told him to count how many articles mentioned him and the team versus those that highlighted individual player achievements. I snorted. Did he count? Yes, and then he just got quiet. I think he's genuinely horrified now that he's seeing it. Admitting it, though, that's another story. 3 months after the accident, Coach suggested team therapy. I agreed cautiously, setting clear parameters. I would participate remotely until I felt comfortable being in the same room with him, and I reserved the right to end any session that became manipulative or unproductive. Dr. Chen, the team therapist, was a straightforward woman in her 50s who established ground rules immediately. No interrupting, no dismissing others' feelings, and a commitment to honest reflection. Our first session was predictably difficult. I feel like Alex is punishing me for one mistake, Coach began. One mistake, I echoed incredulously. Did you not hear anything I said at the meeting? Dr. Chen intervened. Coach, when you characterize your absence during Alex's medical emergency as one mistake, you're minimizing both the event itself and the pattern Alex has described. Can you try to understand why that's problematic? Coach shifted uncomfortably. "I've always supported all my players differently," he mumbled. "You've supported us very differently," Ben interjected. The conversation continued in this vein, with Coach alternating between defensiveness and tentative acknowledgement. He admitted more readily that there might have been inconsistencies in his coaching. "I never meant to play favorites," he insisted tearfully. "The team was always so close-knit, and Alex was always so self-sufficient and independent." "I wasn't self-sufficient by choice," I pointed out. "I became self-sufficient because I learned early that I couldn't count on you the way the team could." By our third session, small breakthroughs began occurring. Coach, prompted by Dr. Chen to research coaching dynamics and player psychology, reluctantly acknowledged that he had indeed demonstrated differential treatment. "I still don't think it was as extreme as Alex describes," he qualified, "but I can see how it might have felt that way to him." "That's not quite taking responsibility," Dr. Chen noted, "but it's a start." In our individual sessions, Dr. Chen helped me navigate my own complex emotions. The anger that sometimes threatened to consume me, the grief for the coaching relationship I never had, and the tentative hope that real change might be possible. "Healing doesn't mean forgetting," she reminded me. "It means finding a way forward that honors your needs and boundaries." Meanwhile, my physical recovery progressed. By month 4, I was walking with only a slight limp, though long distances still required a cane. I returned to light training, part-time, finding unexpected support among teammates who had rallied around me during my absence. 6 months after the accident, Coach took a step that surprised me. He sent a handwritten letter, not a text, not an email, but an actual letter that had clearly taken time and thought to compose. "Dear Alex," it began, "I've been doing a lot of reflecting, both in therapy and on my own. I want to acknowledge, without qualification or excuse, that I have treated you and the team differently throughout your career. I failed to celebrate your achievements with the same enthusiasm I showed for the teams. I did not provide equal support, equal attention, or equal recognition of your needs. Most unforgivably, I wasn't there when you needed me after your accident. I understand now that I created a dynamic where the team was the center and you were relegated to the periphery. I failed to see how my actions communicated that you were somehow less important, less worthy of my time and attention. There is no justification for this, and I am profoundly sorry for the hurt I've caused. I don't expect forgiveness, and I understand that rebuilding trust, if you choose to allow it, will take time and consistent effort on my part. I am committed to that effort, to examining my behaviors and biases, and to creating a more balanced coaching relationship where all my players feel equally valued. With respect and deep regret, Coach." I read the letter several times, searching for the qualifiers and excuses I'd come to expect. Finding none, I shared it with Ben and Dr. Chen, both of whom agreed it represented a significant step forward. "He's really trying," Ben said. "He's been reading books about team dynamics and leadership. He even joined an online support group for coaches whose players feel undervalued." I remained cautiously optimistic. Words were important, but actions would tell the true story. Over the following months, Coach began demonstrating concrete changes. He respected my boundaries without complaint. He acknowledged important events in my life, sending thoughtful messages for my birthday and calling to congratulate me when I was cleared to return to full-time training. Most significantly, he began treating Ben and me with more noticeable parity. He actually turned down the team's invitation to help them scout a new training facility because he'd already committed to having a one-on-one session with me that weekend. "Holy shit," Ben replied eloquently when I told him. Still, somewhat surprised by this development. "Pigs must be flying south for the winter." I laughed, but the shift was meaningful. For the first time, Coach had prioritized a commitment to me over the team's immediate needs. It was a small thing, perhaps, but symbolically significant. 9. Months after the accident, I agreed to attend a team dinner at the training facility. The first time I'd been there since before the injury. Walking in, I immediately noticed changes. New photos had been added to the walls, creating a more balanced visual history of our team. My individual awards, previously stored in my apartment, now held prominent places alongside team trophies. "We've been reviewing old videos and photos," Coach explained, noting my observation. It was eye-opening to see the disparity in documentation. The dinner was awkward at times, but not unpleasant. Coach made visible efforts to engage equally with Ben and me, asking thoughtful questions about my recovery and listening attentively to my responses. After dinner, he asked if I would take a walk with him, just the two of us. We strolled slowly through the deserted training grounds, my occasional limp a permanent reminder of the accident that had catalyzed our dynamics reckoning. "I want you to know," he said after several minutes of silence, "that I'm deeply ashamed of not being there after your accident. There's no excuse, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." It was the most direct, unqualified apology he'd ever offered. Me. "Why, Coach?" I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Why was the team always the priority? He considered this, clearly struggling to articulate something he was only beginning to understand himself. "The team, they reminded me of my younger years," he finally said, "when I was just starting out, eager raw talent needing constant guidance. I think I was trying to relive my own dreams through them. It wasn't a justification, but it was an insight that helped me begin to comprehend the complex psychological underpinnings of our relationship." "And me?" I asked. "Where did I fit in this scenario?" "You were so capable, so reliable," he said, "like I tried to be when I was coming up. I think I took that for granted, expected it, reinforced it. I never realized what I was doing to you in the process." We walked in silence for a while, digesting this revelation. "I'm trying to be better," he said finally. "I know it might be. Too little, too late, but I want you to know I'm trying." "I see that," I acknowledged. And I did. As we turned back toward the facility, I realized that while I wasn't ready to fully forgive, I was ready to continue the journey toward healing, not just my knee, but my relationship with the coach who had hurt me and who was at last beginning to understand the depth of that hurt. 1 year after the accident that changed everything, I stood on the field, a familiar ache in my knee, but a new surge of confidence in my chest. My leg had healed as well as could be expected. I trained with a barely perceptible limp, noticeable only when I was tired or the weather turned cold and damp. The titanium rod would remain in my tibia permanently, setting off airport metal detectors and serving as a tangible reminder of both trauma and recovery. The emotional healing had been more complex, but equally significant. Through continued therapy, both individual and team, new patterns had gradually replaced old ones. Coach, to his credit, had maintained his commitment to change. The transformation wasn't perfect. Old habits occasionally resurfaced, requiring gentle but firm correction, but the difference was undeniable. He called regularly now, asking about my training and actually listening to my responses. He had taken an interest in my rehab process, offering practical advice without attempting to control my decisions. He remembered my milestones, celebrated my progress, and acknowledged my needs with a consistency that still sometimes surprised me. Most importantly, he no longer placed the team's desires automatically at the center of every interaction. The team itself had flourished under this new dynamic, becoming more cohesive and supportive, and establishing clearer boundaries of their own with Coach. Our relationship as teammates had deepened, no longer distorted by competition for coaching. Attention. "It's weird," Ben confessed during a training session. "For so long, I defined myself by being his focus. I didn't realize how limiting that was until it changed." "We were both limited by the roles he assigned us," I replied, stretching my hamstring. You as the golden boy, me as the independent one. Not invisible anymore, he said, bumping my shoulder affectionately. Indeed, my journey toward visibility had extended beyond the team. The experience had transformed how I approached all relationships, professional and personal. I spoke up more in team meetings, advocated for my own playing time with greater conviction, and stopped minimizing my own achievements. This newfound confidence had led to unexpected developments in my professional life as well. During a routine checkup, my orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Davies, who had meticulously pieced my knee back together, made an unexpected comment. "You know, Alex," he said, reviewing my latest scans, "your recovery is nothing short of remarkable. Your discipline and dedication are truly exceptional. I've been in contact with a few colleagues, and there's a scout from a major league club, the Phoenix United, who's been looking for a player with your specific skill set and tenacity. They're rebuilding, and they value resilience above all else. He's heard about your recovery, and he's intrigued." My heart pounded. Phoenix United. That was a top-tier team, a dream for any aspiring professional. "Intrigued how?" I managed to ask, trying to keep my voice level. Dr. Davies smiled. "He wants to see you play. Not just a tryout. He wants to see you in a real game setting, proving your recovery and your mental strength." The opportunity felt surreal. After everything, after being benched by my own coach, after battling back from a devastating injury, this was it. This was the chance. It also meant confronting my current situation head-on. If Phoenix United was watching, they'd be watching me, not the team. And that meant the spotlight would be squarely on my performance. I approached Coach with the news, anticipating his usual reaction, a focus on how this could benefit the team. But to my surprise, he listened intently, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Phoenix United," he murmured. "That's a big deal, Alex. A really big deal. We need to get you ready. Not just physically, but mentally. This isn't just about showing them your skills. It's about showing them your heart, your drive." This was a new coach, one who genuinely seemed to understand what I needed. He began dedicating extra time to my specific training, tailoring drills to my recovery, and working with me on my mental game. He even suggested I get a second opinion from a sports psychologist specializing in high-pressure situations. The support felt authentic, a stark contrast to the dismissiveness I'd grown accustomed to. The scout from Phoenix United, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Thompson, arrived 2 weeks later to observe a scrimmage. The air on the field was thick with anticipation. Coach had kept my opportunity quiet, wanting to avoid unnecessary pressure, but word had leaked. The team knew what was at stake for me. As I warmed up, I saw Coach talking intently with Mr. Thompson on the sidelines, pointing at me occasionally. For once, I didn't feel a pang of resentment. I felt a flicker of pride that he was advocating for me. The scrimmage began, and I played with a ferocity I hadn't felt since before my injury. My knee held, my movements fluid, my passes precise. I pushed past the lingering phantom pains, the mental hurdles, and focused solely on the game. There was one moment, a critical play, where I had to make a split-second decision. The ball was loose, rolling towards the opposition's goal. It was a risky dive, a chance for a collision that could re-injure me. But it was also the only way to save the play. Without hesitation, I launched myself forward, sliding to intercept the ball. I felt a jarring impact, a momentary flash of white. But I came up with the ball, sending it safely back to a teammate. Coach shouted from the sidelines, a mix of relief and pride in his voice. Mr. Thompson, I noticed, scribbled something furiously on his notepad. After the scrimmage, Mr. Thompson approached me, his expression unreadable. "Alex," he said, extending a hand. "Impressive. Very impressive. Especially that last play. Took guts." We spoke for a few minutes. He asked about my recovery, my mental state, my aspirations. He didn't ask about the team or coach's system or anything that didn't pertain directly to my performance and character. Later that evening, Coach called me. "Alex," he said, his voice unusually subdued. "Mr. Thompson just called me. He said he's seen enough. He wants to offer you a contract with Phoenix United. Not a tryout contract, a full professional contract. They want you immediately, pending a final medical clearance." I was speechless. The dream, which had felt so distant, so impossible just a few months ago, was now a tangible reality. "He also said," Coach continued, his voice cracking slightly, "that your resilience, your leadership, and your sheer determination to overcome adversity made you stand out. He said he's never seen a player fight back like you have." A lump formed in my throat. This wasn't just about the contract, it was about the recognition, the validation. "Thank you, Coach," I managed to say, "for everything." He was silent for a moment. "No, Alex, thank you. You taught me more than I ever taught you." The next week was a whirlwind of medical checks, contract negotiations, and emotional goodbyes. The team, surprisingly, was genuinely happy for me. Ben threw me a small farewell party, insisting I was paving the way for all of us. Even Coach, though clearly affected, expressed his pride and wished me well. It was a bittersweet departure. I was leaving the only team I'd ever known, the coach who had caused me so much pain, but also, in the end, had played a part in my healing. Then came the final twist. 2 weeks after I signed my contract with Phoenix United, a news article popped up on my feed. The headline sent a jolt through me. "Long-standing coach of previous team name, replaced amidst calls for new leadership." The article detailed the club's decision to part ways with Coach, citing a need for a fresh perspective and a more player-centric approach, following a string of inconsistent performances and player feedback. It was vague, but I knew. My standing up to him, Ben's support, the quiet rebellion that had simmered beneath the surface, it had all contributed. My absence, my move to Phoenix United, had simply been the final, undeniable proof that change was needed. I wasn't gloating. There was no triumphant feeling, just a quiet sense of justice. It was a stark reminder that sometimes the most powerful changes come not from grand gestures, but from simply valuing yourself enough to walk away from what no longer serves you and demanding better. 1 year after signing with Phoenix United, I stood on the field, the roar of thousands of fans echoing in my ears. I was starting. My leg, though still bearing the scar, was strong. The titanium rod a constant reminder of how far I'd come. I was no longer defined by the injury or the coach who had benched me, but by my resilience and my ability to thrive. My emotional healing had been even more profound. Through continued therapy, I'd learned to fully embrace my worth, not as an afterthought or a reliable background character, but as a protagonist in my own story. My relationship with my former coach remained respectful but distant. We exchanged occasional messages, and he even sent me a congratulatory note after my first major league goal. I saw genuine pride in his words, not the old, fleeting kind. He was doing his own work, his own healing. Ben and I remained close, his unwavering support a testament to true friendship. Our bond, forged in adversity, was stronger than ever. I had built a life filled with people who valued me exactly as I was, teammates who respected my drive, coaches who saw my potential, and a new life that embraced me fully. Sometimes the most devastating breaks lead to the most necessary healing. Sometimes you have to shatter completely to rebuild something stronger. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most deeply can, if they're willing to do the work, become the people who help you heal. My benched leg hadn't just changed my career, it had set me free. Have you ever been benched by life, only to find a new path forward? Share your stories in the comments below, and if my journey resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories, and share this with someone who might be struggling with a similar challenge. Remember, Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, even when, especially when, it's against the very people who are supposed to be on your side. Thank you for being here, and I wish you strength on your own healing journey, whatever form it may take.